Episode 1. It starts at a slightly worn-out mansion, where a young elf girl named Lily has just woken up. Cheerfully, she walks over to wake up the main character Xenos afterward. Lily gently prepares tea so the two of them can enjoy it together in a peaceful setting. Here, the story explains that a healing mage becomes stronger based on their rank at rank 3. They can only heal wounds at rank 2, they can heal the whole body, and at rank 1, they have the power to make the entire world a better place. The history of this kingdom is closely tied to healers. Their significant contributions helped expand the territory and solidify the kingdom's position. At the Royal Hospital, many people study advanced healing magic and obtain a license before beginning their challenging journeys. However, in a remote, hidden corner of the kingdom, there's someone who never formally trained and doesn't even have a license. That person is none other than Xenos. At this moment, he just finished treating a patient and received his payment. After the patient left, Lily approached and told him he had a house call today. Xenos agreed and said he'd be back before sunset. Hearing that, Lily happily said she'd wait for him with dinner already prepared, right after she started cooking. Just then, the third resident of the house, a ghost named Carmilla, appeared. Watching Lily cook always made her want to try the food. She especially admired the delicious-looking stew. Lily proudly said her cooking was good because she wanted to become Xenos' wife someday. Carmilla smiled at that sweet enthusiasm and said she'd return to her room to rest. Just a few seconds later, someone knocked on the door. Lily opened it and found Zofia, a member of the lizard folk, looking for Xenos. Lily explained that he was out on a house call, but Zofia decided to wait. She had barely sat down when another guest arrived, Linga, a member of the Wolfkin. Once again, Lily had to explain that Xenos wasn't home. Linga looked disappointed because she was planning to lick him all over. Zofia insisted she was here first and told Linga to go home, which only started a full-blown argument. Lily got annoyed and declared that Xenos belonged to her. Surprisingly, that calmed both of them down. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the door and the girls immediately guessed who it was. Lily stepped outside and saw Lou, a girl from the Hawk tribe, had kicked the door down and barged in. Calmly, Lily repeated that Xenos wasn't home. Then she added that the others were already inside, but Loie needed to help fix the door before coming in. Once all three were gathered, Linga accused the others of being copycats. Loie asked if they came just for Lily's food. Meanwhile, Lily was putting finishing touches on her fragrant stew. She invited everyone to have dinner together while waiting for Xenos to return. A little later, Lily said she was going to hang up the laundry and asked them to watch the stew. The irresistible smell overwhelmed Linga and Loue. They sneaked a taste and soon couldn't stop eating. Zofia hesitated at first, afraid Lily would scold her, but eventually gave in to temptation and joined the secret feast. Within minutes, the stew was completely gone. The girls tried to come up with a reasonable excuse, but none of them could think of anything. When Lily returned and saw the chaotic scene, she smiled and asked for an explanation, but no one gave a good answer. She kept smiling, this time, with a much scarier smile, and asked them to confess again. The three girls started bickering, but the moment someone mentioned Xenos, they instantly changed the subject. They began comparing who was more attractive. Lily told them to stop, saying that if Xenos saw this, he'd be upset. She also shared that she was really looking forward to having dinner with everyone. Hearing that, the girls felt guilty and offered to help remake the food, but Lily was out of ingredients. Right then, Carmilla suddenly phased through the wall. She looked furious about what had happened. The three girls instantly knelt down and apologized with terrified expressions. While everyone was still panicking, Lily gently suggested that they all go outside together to gather ingredients and cook again from scratch. With just the two of them left, Carmilla scolded Lily for being too soft, but she also admitted that Lily had a very warm heart. As for Carmilla, if anyone dared eat her food, she'd curse the whole lot of them. But that was just her usual way of doing things. Lily softly replied that she was more mature and genuinely hoped everyone could get along. Even so, she wasn't sure if she'd finish cooking in time before Xenos came home. The scene shifts to our main character Xenos, who's now wandering through the town. During his walk, he notices a noblewoman who seems frail and exhausted. Just a few seconds later, a man showed up, furious that the girl had left without telling him. Turns out he was her master. She explained that she had a stomachache, went to the hospital, but couldn't get treated because she had no money. The man didn't care. He grabbed her hand and dragged her away, saying that wasn't an excuse to skip work. He dragged her to a cemetery and threw her hard onto a grave. This violent act unintentionally awakened an evil spirit, which began to possess the girl's frail body. While this was happening, the master kept cursing and insulting her, even stomping on her stomach without mercy. After that, he turned to leave, not wanting to waste time on what he saw as nonsense. But after just a few steps, he stopped and turned around, sensing something strange. By now, the evil spirit had fully taken over the girl. She lunged at him with claws and slashed a deep wound into his belly. Now completely possessed, she went berserk and lost all control. Terrified, the man ran for his life. While fleeing, he ran into Xenos. He immediately begged for help, saying his slave had gone crazy and was attacking him. Acting all innocent, he asked Xenos to defeat the girl for him. He promised a generous reward. Xenos began asking questions, wanting to investigate more. He asked why they were at the cemetery. The man vaguely replied that he was harvesting something, then tried to push Xenos to eliminate the girl, claiming he was seriously injured and needed a hospital. Just then, the girl attacked. Xenos quickly shoved the man out of the way to avoid the strike. The girl then picked up rocks and threw them repeatedly, but Xenos dodged with graceful, practiced movements. Impressed, the noble admired Xenos' skill and begged harder for him to kill her, but Xenos flat out refused. Because he doesn't kill people. The noble got angry and shouted that if nothing was done, he'd be killed. Besides, as a noble, he could always replace the slave girl. Still, Xenos firmly declined. He's a healer, someone who always tries to save lives. Seeing that the small rocks weren't working, the girl picked up a massive boulder and hurled it with incredible strength. Xenos reacted instantly, wrapping his arm in magical energy and smashing the rock to pieces with a single punch. The noble stood frozen, unable to believe a healer had such terrifying power. The battle continued. Xenos noticed that the girl was far quicker than an average demi-human. But as she closed in to strike, a magical barrier suddenly appeared, launching her into an old building. It collapsed and ended up trapping the noble underneath. Xenos then walked closer. He calmed the girl and used healing magic to drive the evil spirit out of her body. Once she returned to normal, he perfectly healed all her injuries. A little later, the noble crawled out from the rubble and witnessed everything Xenos had just done. Realizing Xenos was truly a healer, he begged for help. But Xenos coldly refused. He was off duty. If the noble wanted immediate treatment, he'd have to pay a huge fee. The noble quickly tossed a pouch full of sparkling gold coins. But Xenos still thought that wasn't enough. Offended, the noble argued that the money exceeded market rates and accused Xenos of extortion. In response, Xenos gave a slight smile and casually revealed that he was just an unlicensed back alley healer. He had no official license. He even joked that his work was basically grave digging with extra steps. Hearing that, the noble immediately denied everything and acted like he didn't understand what Xenos meant. That's when Xenos remembered the man had mentioned harvesting earlier. But he didn't care enough to press further. Instead, he made another offer. The noble could hand over the girl in exchange for treatment. The noble agreed without hesitation. After getting healed, he handed Xenos the gold and the ownership papers for the girl. Xenos sat down beside the unconscious girl. He waited until she woke up. When she opened her eyes, he politely introduced himself and told her that he had purchased her. He also asked how to properly pronounce her name. The girl replied that her name was Tur. Right after, Xenos suddenly asked her to undress. He explained that since she was quite expensive, he needed to check if her body was in stable condition. Tur blushed but followed his request, only removing the top part of her clothes. Xenos stepped closer and gently placed his hand on her to examine her condition. Instantly, he discovered she had gallstones. The condition had caused inflammation of the bile ducts. Her poor posture had led to frequent abdominal pain, and the jaundice he had noticed earlier confirmed it. Without saying much, he used healing magic to completely remove the gallstones in just a moment. Once everything was done, Tur nervously asked what he had just done. Xenos casually replied that he operated, removed the stones and stitched her back up. No magical circles, no incantations, and not a single trace left behind. She was stunned, while Xenos said any healer could do it. For him, it was just routine work. Tur bowed her head in gratitude for his help, but she also felt unsure about how to repay him. Xenos told her she'd need to work to pay back the life debt. Without hesitation, Tur expressed her resolve. She said she'd do anything he asked, since she now belonged to him. Xenos asked if she knew where to find a certain herb he needed, and she quickly led him to the place. After they collected the herbs, Xenos declared her debt fully repaid. Tur still didn't feel satisfied, but Xenos insisted that he valued fairness in giving and receiving. From now on, he said he was returning her freedom, and emphasized that her life now belonged solely to herself, no longer owned by anyone. Hearing those words, Tur became emotional and confessed that she still didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. But once she figured it out, she promised she'd come back and tell him. Xenos gladly agreed. Before leaving, he added that if she ever got hurt again, she could still come to him, of course not for free. Xenos returned home and was welcomed by Lily, who happily announced that dinner was ready. The other girls had just finished gathering the ingredients. He didn't say anything, just quietly walked to his seat. From the corner, Carmilla peeked out and teased that he looked happy after meeting a special girl. But Xenos simply told her not to bother him. Just then, Lily came over and said she'd prepare a big feast. But first, she would make tea for the two of them to enjoy. That simple offer made Xenos smile and he accepted. Episode 2 transitions to Xenos' past, back when he was still part of an adventurer group. One late night, the group's leader, a guy named Aston, handed him a shiny gold coin. Seeing Xenos completely stunned, Aston sneered and said, "It's not surprising at all that you don't recognize it. A precious reward like this is something a piece of trash, like you would never get the chance to even lay eyes on in your miserable, pathetic life." Because lately he hadn't been able to do anything useful. They didn't need him anymore. Xenos tried to protest, reminding them that they once said they were close friends. But his words only made Aston and the others burst into mocking laughter. Aston sneered that Xenos was still as stupid as he had been as a little kid. To Aston, Xenos was nothing more than a lowly beast, a foolish animal that thought being fed made him part of the group. But now things were different. They had become one of the most famous adventurer groups in the region, so they no longer needed him. Xenos tried to argue that it was thanks to him they became strong, but Aston cut him off coldly, refusing to let him take any credit, claiming he had learned healing magic by himself. Aston said they needed to attract the attention of wealthy nobles, and they couldn't keep traveling with a stinking, filthy guy from the slums like Xenos anymore. Finally, Aston said the gold coin was a farewell gift, since with it, Xenos could go wherever he wanted. However, he also warned him never to tell anyone he had once been a member of the Golden Phoenix, making Xenos bitterly realize that the gold coin was nothing more than a dirty bribe to shut him up. With no more words to fight back, Xenos bitterly accepted and turned to leave. Meanwhile, Aston and the others kept laughing at him in utter humiliation. Elsewhere, at the same time, a pair of smugglers were holding a tiny elf girl with the cruel intent to sell her on the black market. That girl was none other than Lily. The little girl struggled fiercely to avoid being captured. Eventually, she broke free from the smuggler holding her and began a desperate escape. But in her panicked flight, she was shot in the leg with an arrow, making it impossible to run any farther. When the smuggler grabbed her again, Lily bit his hand hard, but that only made him angrier, and he pulled out a knife, ready to stab. Right at that moment, Xenos happened to pass by and witnessed the horrific scene. Seeing Lily bleeding heavily, he couldn't help but feel deeply worried. The two smugglers bluntly declared that the girl was their valuable merchandise. Faced with the situation, Xenos immediately decided to hand over the gold coin to buy her. The leader accepted it without hesitation, since the amount was much more than they could earn by selling her. They left right away without a single complaint. As they were leaving, Xenos overheard the woman among them whispering to her companion about making the most out of the dying elf girl's value. At that moment, Lily weakly murmured that she was dying. But Xenos stayed calm, gently reassuring her that he could easily heal her wound. After casting the healing spell, Lily whispered that it was too late because she couldn't even feel any pain anymore. But Xenos calmly explained that it was because she had already been completely healed. Hearing that, Lily immediately stopped pretending to be in pain. Seeing her wound had vanished, she couldn't help but be amazed, having been completely convinced she was going to die. Witnessing such a miracle made Lily even more curious about how Xenos had saved her. Xenos simply answered that he was a healer. He just needed to pull out the arrow, heal the damage, and close the wound. Hearing this, Lily burst into tears, crying and thanking him. And it was at that very moment that the two of them learned each other's names for the first time. After that, Lily mentioned the gold coin, but Xenos just chuckled and told her not to worry about it, silently thinking that the coin was the last memento from Aston, something he no longer wanted to keep. Lily innocently asked if he was a famous healer, but Xenos shook his head and honestly said he didn't even have an official license. Everything he knew was self-taught. When asked where he lived, Lily sadly replied that she had no home. At that moment, her stomach growled from hunger. Seeing this, Xenos gently said the first priority was to find her some proper clothes and something to eat. After getting her cleaned up, he took Lily to a small inn where they could have a peaceful meal. This made Lily extremely happy. However, she hesitated and asked if Xenos would eat too. He replied that he was already full, but the truth was he had no money left, so he could only smile awkwardly. Deep down, Xenos pondered what he should do next with the girl. He had thought about taking her to an orphanage, but abandoned the idea, fearing she would be mistreated there. When Lily asked what his job was, Xenos honestly said he had just kicked out of the adventurer group he once belonged to, making Lily think that both of them were in the same precarious situation. Unexpectedly, a lizardman walked into the inn with a large wound on his arm. Just one glance and Xenos quickly guessed it was a gunshot wound and a burn caused by a magical weapon. The lizardman confirmed it, saying it was punishment for his carelessness, although he wished it hadn't hurt so much. Xenos told him not to exaggerate, because even though the wound wasn't minor, it would heal soon enough. Those words of comfort made the lizardman uneasy, realizing his wound was worse than he had thought. Xenos immediately used healing magic and completely healed the wound in just a few seconds. The lizardman instantly asked who he was, and Lily quickly chimed in, introducing Xenos as an incredibly skilled healer. The guy believed it right away, impressed by his outstanding ability. He stepped forward, handed over a few coins as payment, and left with sincere gratitude. Xenos smiled and said that, just like you pay for food at a restaurant, healers should also charge for their healing services. Lily found this completely reasonable, then suddenly remembered that she had thanked him when he saved her. To her, it was only natural to be grateful when someone helped you. Right at that moment, Xenos made an important decision. He would open a small healing clinic. Hearing words of thanks had made him truly happy, because no one had ever thanked him before. However, living in the poor slums, he couldn't get a proper license, and he felt that going through the official procedures would be extremely difficult. So in the end, he had no choice but to work underground as an illegal healer. Lily immediately got excited about the idea and eagerly offered to help at the clinic. But Xenos worried because what he was about to do was against the law, and he didn't want to drag an innocent child like her into something illegal. However, Lily slyly reminded him that since he bought her, he was now her master. Seeing Xenos still hesitating, she teased that maybe he bought her just to throw her away. Xenos hurriedly told her not to say things like that, as it could cause unnecessary misunderstandings. In the end, he agreed to let her stay by his side, but only until he could find her a truly safe place. Lily felt greatly relieved and said she would serve all her master's needs. Xenos reminded her to be more careful with her choice of words. Afterward, the two of them headed to a deserted, rundown area because if they were going to open an underground clinic, it needed to be somewhere discreet. Xenos knew there were still a few houses around here that were intact. After a careful search, they arrived in front of an abandoned mansion that still looked pretty solid. Lily instinctively clung to his shirt and nervously said that monsters often lurked in creepy places like this, and if they ran into a ghost, they'd be doomed. Xenos calmly asked what a ghost was. Lily explained that it was a powerful monster that couldn't die, could kill or enslave people with just a touch. Before stepping inside, Lily asked him to wait and began chanting, creating a small glowing orb of light. Seeing his surprise, she confirmed that she could use magic, though only simple spells. Thanks to the light from the orb, they could see much more clearly inside the mansion. Xenos felt the place wasn't bad at all, because back when he was adventuring, he usually had to sleep outdoors, so a place like this already felt luxurious. He then inspected the pillars and found they were still sturdy, meaning the repairs wouldn't be too difficult. Lily commented that Xenos was a very optimistic person, and he didn't deny it, because after losing everything, even the smallest blessings now felt precious to him. Suddenly, the thing Lily feared most appeared. A ghost materialized out of the gloom. Just as it was about to attack, Xenos instantly cast a healing spell to create a shield, all while maintaining an impressive calmness. He told Lily that if it was really a ghost, he had already defeated hundreds of them before. Because every time Aston got mad and needed to vent, he would cruelly throw him into a dungeon full of undead monsters. That's how Xenos discovered that healing magic was surprisingly effective against them. Lily was amazed that he had survived such horrors. Xenos then turned to the ghost and said this was the only place he could stay. So if it didn't mind, could they stay here? The ghost looked absolutely furious, as if deeply insulted. It lunged to kill him, but as soon as it touched him, it instantly recoiled, sensing the terrifying threat from his healing magic. Furious, it shrieked that no mortal had ever dared to enrage it like this before. It declared its name was Carmilla, Queen of the Ghosts. Then she immediately summoned her minions to attack. Xenos just sighed heavily, because he had really wanted to settle things peacefully at first. But with no choice, he unleashed a grand heal spell, a powerful magic that wiped out all the minions in a flash. Carmilla was utterly stunned and asked who he was. But Xenos simply replied that he was just an illegal healer. Then he apologized and asked if they could just use one room for treating patients and another small room for sleeping. Carmilla agreed, allowing them to use the first floor, while she would keep the second floor as her domain. Xenos sincerely thanked her for her generosity. As the ghost withdrew, Lily watched her go and hesitantly said she didn't know whether to feel happy or sad. After that, they got to work fixing up the place, trying to make the clinic look a bit more welcoming and tidy. Lily even suggested going out to promote it, since she wanted to show off the nurse uniform they had prepared. However, Xenos looked worried, because if they weren't careful, the official hospitals might find out about them. Even so, he told her not to worry too much, because he believed customers would come to them naturally. And sure enough, just a few seconds later, the lizard men they had treated earlier showed up again. Xenos smiled and said he had already predicted this, because with the kind of burns caused by magical weapons, it definitely wasn't something a normal person would have, and people like that had good reasons to avoid official hospitals. The lizardman introduced himself as Zond and asked if Xenos could heal his older sister. And that's how they met Zofia. The girl showed her badly damaged arm, injured by a magical bullet. Xenos quickly assessed that the bullet was still inside and the toxins were slowly rotting the flesh. Zofia was amazed that he could figure out so much with just a glance. Xenos mentioned that he had almost become a test subject for cruel experiments once. Thinking about it now, he felt determined to get his revenge someday. Pushing aside those grim memories, Zofia asked if he could heal her. Xenos calmly explained that most of the arm had already necrotized, so the best option was to amputate it before the toxins spread further. Zofia sighed but accepted. She then asked how much the surgery would cost. Xenos replied that it would be 1 million yen. The first to react angrily was Zond, furious because he thought the price was outrageous just to cut off an arm. Zofia told her brother to calm down and sarcastically joked that this doctor clearly had no heart. She asked if he charged such a high price because he didn't know she was Zofia the Tempest. Xenos remained calm, showing no surprise, but deep inside, he realized his very first customer was a big fish. He knew very well that Zofia was one of the most famous leaders in the slums, head of the lizardman gang and a heroine to the poor. Someone who robbed greedy merchants to help those in need. Zofia demanded an explanation for why he dared to charge 1 million yen just to cut her arm. Before she could start threatening him, Xenos quickly interrupted, explaining that he wasn't just going to amputate but would actually regenerate an entirely new arm, and that the process was extremely exhausting and energy-consuming. He also emphasized that he didn't work for free. No matter how important the client was, he expected fair payment. Zofia asked again, thinking he was joking, because no healer she knew had ever been able to regenerate a limb. This surprised Xenos a little, and he realized she truly didn't know about high-level healing magic. In the end, Zofia agreed to let him perform the surgery. Xenos took out a special tool saying it was a magically enhanced scalpel, extremely sharp, sterilized, and could be summoned or dismissed through magic. Zofia was amazed because she had never seen a doctor use such a strange knife before, and curiously asked how he usually operated. Without answering, Xenos immediately used magic to numb the pain and sterilize the area, then swiftly amputated the damaged arm. Afterward, he used defensive magic to stop the bleeding, combined it with advanced healing magic to accelerate tissue regeneration. The process started with rebuilding the bone, then the nerves, blood vessels, muscles, and finally, restoring the skin. Within just a few short seconds, the surgery was complete. Zofia looked at her brand new arm with eyes full of amazement and awe, because she had never seen anything so miraculous. Suddenly, Zahn stupidly asked what was up on the ceiling. Xenos calmly answered that it was a ghost living with them. While both of them were still stunned, Carmilla suddenly showed up, grumbling that yet another patient hadn't died, then stomped away angrily. Zahn mumbled that she truly had no heart. But Xenos just chuckled and said that, actually, Carmilla was quite adorable, she just didn't show it. At that moment, Zofia commented that not only was Xenos incredibly talented, but he was also very funny. She asked if he would mind if she brought more acquaintances over for treatment, and of course, they would pay properly. On another morning, Lily brought out 3 fragrant cups of tea, telling Xenos she had made an extra cup for Carmilla. When Carmilla came downstairs, Lily quickly warned her that the tea was still hot. But being distracted, Carmilla accidentally burned herself and screamed in anger, then rushed back upstairs. Brushing off the incident, Lily turned to Xenos and asked why members of the Lizardman gang seemed to get injured so often, since she had helped quite a few of them lately. Xenos guessed it was because of the constant conflicts between gangs, as there were 3 major factions in the slums that were always in a state of cold war. Just then, Linga appeared with her loyal wolf pack. She was the leader of the werewolves and as usual introduced herself with pride. Xenos knew very well that Linga ran the illegal games in the slums and always managed to attract the big fish. Linga explained that she had come looking for him because even after beating the Lizardmen gang to a pulp, thanks to his healing, they always came back as if nothing had happened. Therefore, according to her, the best way to eliminate the threat was to get rid of Xenos. Without giving him a chance to react, she lunged straight at him, aiming for his throat. However, Xenos managed to instantly deploy a defensive magic shield, a skill he had taught himself, making even her entire wolf pack powerless. Furious, Linga ordered her subordinates to destroy the clinic. But just as they began, Carmilla appeared, ready to slaughter them all. Xenos hurriedly stopped her and gently thanked her for listening to him. Although Carmilla looked annoyed, she quietly admitted that lately she had been feeling quite comfortable living there. Faced with the situation, Linga had no choice but to change her attitude, bowing her head to apologize. Because among werewolves, beings like ghosts and vampires were considered noble, and they didn't want to offend someone who could command a royal ghost. Shortly after, the orc chief named Lowu also sent someone to summon him, showing how Xenos was gradually making contact with the major forces in the slums. The next day, an orc came to find Xenos and informed him that Lo, the leader of the orc tribe, wanted to meet him. Xenos had already anticipated this, because if the other 2 factions had shown up, then the orcs would surely appear as well. He knew Lowu was a powerful figure, but still asked the messenger whether it was possible to reason with her. The orc said that although the leader was very strict, she was also wise, so there was no need to worry too much. Even so, Xenos still felt skeptical, especially since Zofia kept bringing gifts to the clinic, and Linga was even building a palace next door to compensate for the damage she had caused. If the orc leader was also willing to cooperate, everything could go smoothly. Xenos then asked why Lowy didn't come in person, and he was told that there were too many enemies around, so she couldn't move on her own. Upon hearing that, he immediately prepared to leave. Because to him the orc should have said this from the beginning. They went to a cave, the leader's dwelling place. Xenos asked how she knew about him, and Lowy said it was obvious, since he was now famous throughout the slums. Both the lizardmen and the werewolves were whispering about a great healer, whose name they didn't even dare to speak, so she had sent someone to investigate. Lowy asked if it was true that he treated people at reasonable prices, and he confirmed it, saying he was tired of working for free. She revealed that she couldn't leave the place, and he wanted to know why. Xenos wasn't sure if this was some kind of test, but still agreed to examine her. He activated his scanning skill to inspect her internal organs and found something in her abdomen. He guessed it might be a magic stone, and she confirmed it was an extremely powerful explosive spell. When he asked why it was in her stomach, Lowu confessed that she mistook it for a rice ball and ate it. Xenos felt like he had wasted his time, thinking it would naturally come out, but she immediately said that was impossible because she had bitten it, and now it could explode at any moment. Even moving could trigger an explosion. Knowing that death was near, Lowy wanted to give her entire fortune to Xenos. Although he usually charged for his treatments, she knew he often helped children completely free of charge. To her, that was a noble deed, and leaving her assets to a good person like him was better than letting others steal it when she died. Xenos asked how long ago she had swallowed the stone, and Loui said not long. Xenos immediately took out a magical scalpel. The surrounding orcs reacted defensively at once, but he took only a few seconds to remove the stone. Loui didn't understand what had just happened but warned that the stone was about to explode. It did explode, but thanks to a layer of defensive magic around his hand, Xenos was completely unharmed. He returned Loui's key and was about to leave. Loui didn't understand why he refused the fortune, but he simply replied that he worked at a fair price, regardless of who it was. Even so, she still wanted to thank him by having someone guard his clinic 24/7 or inviting him to a meal, but Xenos declined. A few days later, Lily seemed quite upset because Zofia Linga and Lou kept visiting Xenos. He didn't understand what was going on, but Carmilla explained that the three of them were clearly infatuated with him. Although he didn't believe it, Carmilla insisted it was true and said the three factions might even start a war over their love for him. As expected, the next day Zofia arrived and declared that she would wage war on the other two factions and wanted Xenos to become her ally. Linga did the same, and so did Lowu. They even brought countless gifts to win him over. However, it was clear that he didn't want to get involved in any of it. Carmilla had already warned him in advance, and Lily was extremely jealous because she couldn't stand the fact that the three women were all infatuated with the man she loved. At an arena at noon, all three factions had gathered ready for battle. Zofia was the first to speak, declaring that the other two factions were bold to come here just to die. Now was the time to decide who would stand above all. Linga mocked her and declared that she would unleash her full power to teach her opponents a lesson. Meanwhile, Lowu was full of confidence, believing her orcs were the strongest warriors in the world. At that moment, Xenos appeared, but not to stop the fight. He said he understood that this kind of thing often happened between factions, so he would let them fight until they were satisfied. And so, the three women rushed into battle, not for power, but because they wanted to take Xenos' virginity, something he had no idea about. Zofia attacked first, striking Linga, but then Louis launched an aerial strike on Zofia, sending her flying. The battle quickly turned into complete chaos. Everyone kept fighting from noon until sunset, and no one could understand how they were still able to stand and keep battling. The fight should have ended long ago. Even Zofia realized that her wounds were healing almost instantly. At that moment, Xenos spoke up and reminded them that he wasn't there to stop the fight, but that he was a dark healer, so he would continue healing everyone, which meant they could fight forever. Zofia felt stupid for not realizing it sooner. Linga and Loui were amazed at the power Xenos possessed, a power that allowed them to fight endlessly. Xenos said that was the true meaning. If they kept seeking revenge and fighting, the cycle would never end, because he would always heal them, but he would charge full price each time. Hearing that, all three leaders realized they shouldn't continue such a meaningless battle. They agreed to maintain peace between the factions so they wouldn't waste their strength needlessly. However, there was still one battle that couldn't end, the battle for Xenos' love, and in that battle, they would surely give it their all. Lily didn't understand what they meant, so she turned to ask Xenos why he healed everyone. He explained that it was something his teacher once taught him. A third-rate healer only heals wounds. A second-rate healer heals the entire body, but a first-rate healer improves the whole world. She wanted to know who that teacher was, and Xenos replied that he was an eccentric but incredibly impressive man. So even though Xenos was just a third-rate healer, he still wanted to improve life in the slums, a place that, despite everything that happened, remained where he served and cared for others. Suddenly, Lily confessed that she really liked him. Xenos awkwardly responded that he also found her very pleasant. It wasn't the answer Lily had hoped for, but it was still a positive reaction. Finally, Xenos wanted to go home, but first he had to collect all the healing fees for that day, because honestly he had worked extremely hard today. Somewhere far away in a luxurious place, a girl named Krishna was summoned by her superior. The man said there were some rumors that made him extremely uneasy. It seemed that the battle between the demi-humans on the outskirts had significantly calmed down. Krishna couldn't believe it, since for so long they had always been fighting and killing each other. But her superior confirmed it was true, and said the kingdom prospered thanks to the class system. The nobles stayed at the top, while the poor classes were free to slaughter one another. That was what maintained the balance. But if those poor people united and formed a single front, they would become a major threat to the nobility. So the Night Order had to begin monitoring everything closely to protect both the king and the capital. Krishna still couldn't believe that the three demi-human factions could actually ally, and she was even more shocked to hear rumors of a fourth power joining them. Her superior also found it hard to believe, since those three leaders all known for being uncontrollable. However, based on what he had seen and heard, he could no longer rule out any possibility. The current situation posed a serious threat to the state, and he couldn't assign this task to regular soldiers. So, he decided to entrust the investigation to the vice commander, Krishna herself. She immediately promised that if the key figure truly existed, she would eliminate him right away. Meanwhile, back home, the three girls were using every means to seduce Xenos with their bodies, which made Lily feel deeply insecure because she couldn't compare to them. At that moment, Xenos had just finished treating Zofia, who had returned from another mission. She was originally a thief but claimed that she never stole from innocent people. However, because of her shady behavior, she was now being closely watched by the Royal Knights. It was because she had been chased last night that she got injured. When Xenos asked if the wounds on her arms were caused by the Knights, Zofia confirmed they were. The last time she was caught was when sneaking into a noble's mansion. Her younger brother had also been injured by someone known as the Steel Rose. That was Krishna, the vice commander, who was infamous for her ruthlessness and brutal battles that felt like hell. Carmilla said it would be very dangerous if Xenos caught the attention of someone like Krishna, but he was quite confident, thinking he was just an unknown healer not worth noticing. Carmilla emphasized that her instincts with spirits were always accurate and warned him to be careful. To ease the tension, everyone decided to have a shared meal, and so the whole group enjoyed a cheerful dinner together. When Carmilla was about to go upstairs to rest, she reminded Xenos that he was the only one in the capital capable of controlling the 3 human leaders from the outskirts. Xenos understood that. He only hoped that no more troublesome people would appear, but Carmilla seemed to sense that he had just sealed his fate. At that moment, Krishna had arrived in the slums. She was shocked how strangely peaceful everything was. She approached a lizardman and said it had been a long time since she returned here, and she was truly surprised to see all 3 factions getting along. The lizardmen said they had finally realized that no one was as bad as they looked, and that was why they could now live in harmony. Krishna asked what had brought about this peace, but the lizardman hesitated because he didn't know her true identity. In the end, he wanted to leave and said that the person behind all this didn't want any attention. Krishna immediately warned that if he didn't speak, he would regret it. Still, the lizardman remained silent, which astonished Krishna because of his loyalty. Just then, Zofia passed by, forcing Krishna to retreat. As she fled, she noticed that the wounds on Zofia and her brother's arms, which had been very serious, were now nearly fully healed. It was incredibly strange. However, Krishna had to put the matter aside for now to retreat safely, since this place was dangerous for her, and she got lost. Back at the clinic, Xenos suddenly felt a chill, and just then, a stranger appeared saying she only came to ask for directions home. It was Krishna. Her only weakness was a poor sense of direction. Lily came out to greet her, thinking she was a new patient, but Xenos said she wasn't. However, everything suddenly changed when the woman unexpectedly thanked him, then released a poisonous gas straight at him. Episode 4. Turns out she's investigating a series of child abductions and suspects the main guy of being a human trafficker. To her, the idea of an elf girl living with a human man is beyond suspicious. Lily tries to explain that Krishna misunderstood, because it was Xenos who rescued the girl and gave her a peaceful home. Krishna still insisted that without legal documents, everything he did was against the law. Lily kept insisting that Xenos was the one who rescued her from the kidnappers. Hearing that, Krishna apologized, saying she had only knocked the suspect out with one blow. The main guy should have needed time to recover, but surprisingly, he woke up immediately as if nothing had happened. Krishna couldn't believe it. There's no way someone hit by her magic shot could be totally fine. She apologized again, admitting she had acted too rashly, then asked why he wasn't hurt. Xenos said he just used a bit of defensive magic. But to Krishna, that made no sense. Her weapon was built to pierce through defensive spells. Even though he kept insisting, she simply couldn't believe it. Too many strange things had happened today. Xenos said the weirdest thing was a stranger showing up at his door and suddenly opening fire. Krishna asked if he was a genius in defensive magic, because that was the only way to explain how he blocked her attack. She demanded the truth, saying no one could fool Lieutenant Krishna. Both Xenos and Lily were stunned to hear her name. But Krishna didn't hide anything and even asked for his help in the investigation. She revealed she came to the slums on a secret mission. Though, it wasn't secret anymore since she had spilled everything. To sum it up, her goal was to find the Peacemaker, the one who ended the war between the demi-human factions. Xenos couldn't believe it. Carmilla, on the other hand, burst out laughing because she was finally proven right. Krishna explained that even after all the pressure, the demi-humans still refused to give any info about the Peacemaker. Xenos guessed the person probably just wanted a quiet life, far from the spotlight. Krishna asked if he knew who it was, but he denied it, saying it was just a hunch. Still, she insisted the Peacemaker must be captured, as he could pose a threat to the nation someday. But Lily thought differently. Maybe that person just wanted peace, or even just good health for everyone. And with those words, she nearly gave the truth away. Krishna immediately asked what she knew, but Lily quickly denied it. Xenos then offered to take her back to the city, but Krishna grew suspicious of how eager he was to send her off. He explained that wasn't the case. He just wanted to help since she had an important mission. Krishna agreed to leave. But as she passed by the downstairs room, she noticed a bed and wondered why it was on the ground floor. Xenos quickly made up an excuse, saying he planned to throw it away. Surprisingly, Krishna believed him, and even asked to sleep there since she had nowhere to stay in this area. There was a bed, a roof, and it was close to the slums without drawing attention. She said she'd pay in full if allowed to stay. Poor Xenos. He couldn't believe what was happening. Just moments ago everything was peaceful, now it was pure chaos. A bit later, Lily brought out tea for the guest, but then started acting jealous and demanded that Xenos stroke her hair. Meanwhile, Camilla had gone invisible so only Xenos could see her, clearly enjoying the drama. It was obvious Lily had declared war on Krishna, and she wasn't subtle about it, constantly clinging to Xenos to mark her territory. But Krishna didn't seem to care one bit. Poor Lily, but she wasn't giving up. She even threatened to keep Xenos up all night. That energy didn't last long though. Just a few minutes later she passed out. Krishna remembered what Xenos had said earlier and asked if he knew which trafficking group had kidnapped Lily. He said he had no idea. Krishna looked regretful. It was clear the situation in this area was serious. She kept asking questions, this time about Xenos' abilities. Was he a mage who had perfected defensive magic? He completely denied it. Krishna then wondered if someone out there had mastered healing magic the same way Xenos had with defense. If so, could that person regenerate an entire arm? Then she answered her own question, saying that was impossible. Only a saint could pull off a miracle like that. Xenos asked what that had to do with anything. Krishna explained that the lizardfolk leader once suffered a severe arm injury. But not long ago, she saw that same leader and her bodyguards, all with perfectly healed arms like nothing ever happened. So if someone had that kind of healing ability, they must be a major player in the underground world. Regardless, Krishna informed him that starting tomorrow, she'd officially begin her investigation to capture the so-called peacemaker. To her, that person was the greatest threat to humanity, the embodiment of evil. Xenos started to think she was getting too extreme and asked why she hated the slums so much. Krishna sighed and said it wasn't for any noble reason. Her mother had been killed by someone from the slums. Her mom was a kind soul who used to hand out food to the poor there, but she was murdered over a wedding ring. From that day on, Krishna vowed to become a hero, to bring justice so no one else would suffer like her mother, and she actually did it. She became the youngest lieutenant in history. Her nickname, the Iron Rose, came from her unbreakable will. She joked that it might be because her face looked like a steel mask. She hadn't smiled once since her mother died. Hours later, the main guy grew anxious about Krishna's presence, especially when she said she'd return at night. Camilla reassured him not to worry, and Xenos tried to stay positive. He was treating Zofia, who casually asked if the lieutenant had really come all the way here in person. When Krishna arrived earlier than expected, everyone suddenly tensed up. But Xenos quickly explained that Zofia had just gotten lost and he was helping her. Strangely, Krishna believed him. She turned to Zofia and asked why her arm was healed, and whether the peacemaker was the one who saved her. Zofia responded by mentioning a rumor that the Knights were investigating a string of disappearances. But the real culprits weren't from the slums. They were nobles, using the slums as a distraction. She claimed the one behind it all was a man named Calendar. Krishna thought that was absurd. Calendar was a famous philanthropist who helped countless homeless people. Zofia immediately called her a fool for judging based on appearances. She added that the peacemaker was far better. He didn't care about status or background. If someone needed help, he'd help them, as long as they could pay. Zofia then bluntly accused Krishna of being a hypocrite for assuming all evil came from the slums, and that her so-called justice was nothing but a joke. Krishna ran out of patience, but the main guy stepped in. He apologized for keeping this a secret and admitted Zofia was his client, and he was the peacemaker. Krishna couldn't believe it. She thought the peacemaker was a master healer, and she had only seen Xenos use defensive magic. To her, no one could master both types of magic at once. Even though she didn't believe he was the peacemaker, Krishna concluded that Xenos was clearly an ally of the demi-humans and walked away. She declared that the country still needed a heroine, and she wasn't one to back down. Yet when she left, she went in the opposite direction of the slums, which made Xenos suspicious. As expected, Krishna secretly headed to Calendar's mansion without warning. She claimed the area had grown too dangerous and asked to inspect the entire estate for security reasons. Calendar gladly agreed and Krishna felt satisfied. In her eyes, unannounced inspections always yielded the best results. After checking the entire place, she found nothing suspicious. She started to think she was wasting her time. But before leaving, she asked to use the bathroom. On her way there, she thought it was odd that a mid-upper class noble would have such intense security, more guards at the back gate than the front. Suddenly, she remembered something suspicious and decided to follow a narrow tunnel inside the well. The deeper she went, the more uneasy she felt, until she discovered a horrifying truth. A young girl was trembling and begging for help. Krishna gently reassured her, saying she was here to rescue everyone. But just then, Calendar showed up, holding a weapon similar to Krishna's, and fired several shots at her vital areas. He said she was a thorn in his side and that royal knights had no business meddling in noble affairs. Krishna began to think she was going to die. But right at that moment, Zofia appeared, and not just her, Xenos came too, ready to deal with the bastard. Calendar looked down on them, calling them lowborn scum. Then he opened fire, but his attacks didn't affect Xenos at all. Cornered, Calendar begged for mercy. But Xenos wasn't about to forgive him that easily. Even though Calendar apologized to Krishna, Xenos reminded him that empty words meant nothing. He had to make it right with those he'd hurt. Then Xenos shot him until his clothes were shredded. Don't worry, no one died. Xenos' weapon had a limiter, so it only knocked Calendar out. Krishna, however, was badly injured, missing an arm, and close to death. She told Xenos to report everything to the Knights because she couldn't hold on much longer. Surprisingly, her condition was worse than expected. Xenos mocked her for whining over a tiny wound, then told her not to freak out. She was about to see something amazing. And then, he completely healed her. Now she finally believed he was the peacemaker. Krishna felt crushed. Maybe she wasn't the heroine she thought she was, while the true hero was actually Xenos. But Xenos denied it. He said he was just a healer working in the shadows. The real hero was Krishna, the one who showed up to save people who had lost hope. The rescued children clung to her joyfully. And now, Krishna finally understood. Her mother, with all her flaws and struggles, was the true hero. As they left that place, Krishna asked why he healed her. He answered simply, she had promised to pay rent, and if she died there'd be no money. Not to mention the healing fee wasn't cheap either, so he hoped she'd come back to pay in full. Krishna laughed, her first real laugh in years. Awkward as it was, what mattered was that she laughed. Episode 5. While the main character is walking with the little elf girl, she says she wants to try a new kind of tea. At the same time, we see a short flashback from Xenos' past. Back then, a red-haired young man named Aston approached him and invited him to join his adventuring party, since the main character was free and didn't have anything in particular to do at the time. Xenos thought that someone poor like him could never become an adventurer, but Aston said status didn't matter as long as you had skill and determination. Aston asked Xenos if he had any talent. He replied that he knew a bit of healing magic. Aston burst out laughing. He said poor folks like them had no chance to learn magic. Even so, he still let Xenos join the party, mostly because he wanted someone to take care of all the chores. Over time, during their adventures, Aston got injured often and Xenos always healed him immediately, so much that Aston never noticed how useful he was. On the contrary, he always saw Xenos as a useless burden. And as we know, Xenos was later kicked out of the group in a disgraceful way. Now, the old party is working on a mission inside a cave rumored to bring in a fortune. They want to finish quickly so they can go drinking. Apparently, they're struggling with a serious drinking problem. Right now, they're bragging about how famous they are, that their Golden Phoenix party is known far and wide for fighting vicious magical beasts without getting a scratch. Sounds impressive, right? Their mission this time is to hunt down creatures and deliver their hides to a noble named Lord Fennel. Aston orders a party member to cast a defense spell, and the battle begins, but he ends up getting severely injured right away. The others are struggling, some can't even cast a spell in time. Aston doesn't understand what's happening and starts thinking his teammates are all useless. He decides to retreat for now. Outside the cave, he still can't grasp why they lost to mere rank B monsters. The guy in the helmet says Aston didn't do any better. The guy in blue starts wondering, what if Xenos had always been useful? Maybe it was because Xenos could both heal and shield them so well. Aston doubts it but agrees they need a healer. Of course, not someone as useless as Xenos. Clearly, he still hasn't realized anything. 10 days later, the group returns, but only 3 out of 4 remain. They bring along a new healer, a green-haired girl named Uman, who Aston recently hired. He has high hopes for her, but Uman bluntly tells him not to expect too much since she only got her license by luck. She doesn't understand why such a famous group with a flawless record suddenly needs a mediocre healer. And she accidentally lets slip that the injured archer will never be able to go adventuring again. She's also surprised he's even alive after taking a bite to the neck. Even so, Aston doesn't want distractions. He's determined to get those rare hides and impress the noble. When the group enters the cave again, they are ambushed by magical beasts. Even though they activated the defensive barrier, they're still getting pounded. The mage takes a direct hit, and Aston can't understand why the shield was so weak. They're forced to retreat. Aston blames the one in charge of defense, but the healer girl explains the barrier worked properly, and without it, the mage would have died on the spot. Aston demands she heal him immediately. But Uman says she's done all she can. With wounds that bad, he needs to be taken to a hospital with healing magic arrays. Aston insists, but she tells him bluntly it's impossible, unless you're an elite or a saint-level mage. Hearing that, Aston finally starts to realize that the guy they kicked out, Xenos, might have been really good at what he did. He asks Uman if someone without a license could be elite level, but she's doubtful. As for the noble who requested the hides, he's extremely disappointed with the mission's outcome. A few days later, Aston's party is asked to leave and never return. Aston begs to speak with Lord Fennel, but the messenger says it's pointless. The birthday party for the Lord's daughter already happened. and she was the one who was supposed to receive the gift. Now, nothing they say matters. Worse, Lord Fennel isn't just disappointed that the mission failed. He's upset they weren't honest with him from the beginning. If they had just admitted they couldn't handle the monsters, he wouldn't have lost face for showing up without a gift for his daughter. Aston keeps begging for another chance. Well, technically a third chance, and promises to gather new members to complete any mission Lord Fennel assigns. That would be his way of making up for it. After that, the only teammate left asked why Aston made such a promise when no one else was willing to go adventuring anymore. But Aston insisted that there was one person who definitely wanted to return to the party, Xenos, so he decided to go and invite him personally. Now they've arrived in the slums to look for him. Finding someone here isn't easy, but Aston believes he has an effective way, by hiring the 3 leaders of the demi-human factions. They first meet with Zofia, but she says she's busy visiting a patient. That patient is Xenos. Aston, caught in a daydream under the rain, even imagines that once he becomes a noble, he might bring her into his harem. He introduces himself as the leader of the Golden Phoenix and asks her to find someone named Xenos. Zofia bursts out laughing, saying she doesn't care who he is, and she knows exactly who they are. The ones who kicked Xenos out. Aston gets angry and tries to attack, but Zofia tells him he'd better leave, because Xenos now has more important things to do than deal with losers like them. Aston snaps back, asking if she knows who she's talking to. But Zofia responds the same way, asking him if he knows who she is. Seeing no result, they go meet Linga. But when she finds out who they are, she flat out tells them to go die and reincarnate as cockroaches. Aston feels insulted again, but Linga asks if he seriously wants to fight her, because neither she nor Xenos would ever cooperate with roaches. When they meet Lo, things don't go any better. She warns them that if she hears they're bothering Xenos, the orcs will deal with them properly. Aston starts wondering if all these demi-human leaders are in love with the main character. But thinking about it again, maybe they've got the wrong person. It's hard to believe someone like him could have that kind of influence. Just then, Aston's companion spots Xenos passing by. Of course, they rush over to say hello. Xenos is surprised to see them there and immediately asks, "What do you want?" Aston tries to act all important, but Xenos doesn't want to waste time and tries to leave. However, the red-haired guy calls out, saying they've come to let him rejoin the Golden Phoenix. Xenos instantly refuses, saying the group always treated him terribly. They paid him in beans instead of money. Aston can't understand why he's being turned down like this. The main character says if they truly need him, fine, he'll join them in his free time. But they'll have to pay a huge amount for each healing session. Aston loses it, feeling insulted. He can't believe this guy dares to name a price when he doesn't even have a proper place to die. But then, some demi-humans show up to thank the main character and invite him to a meal as gratitude for his excellent work. Lily finds the crowd too noisy and wants to go home early. Aston tells Xenos to think it over, insisting that he was the first person to give him a place to belong. But the main character says it's too late and tells him to stop bothering him. Aston still won't let go and tries to attack, but Krishna steps in. She says that in her presence, no one is allowed to act with hostility. Turns out she came to see Xenos. It's strange since he doesn't even live here, but because she got lost and happened to meet him here, it ended up being a lucky coincidence. Aston can't understand why someone like Vice, Captain Krishna would be close to Xenos. He wonders what the main character could have done to earn all that in such a short time. Krishna warns Aston that he'll be taken to the guard post, and he's shocked when Aston immediately blames his companion. He claims it was that guy who forced him to act that way. It's unbelievable how low he can sink. Later, when everyone gathers, the female demi-human leaders say it's true. Members of the Golden Phoenix had tried to hire them, but every single one of them had flat out refused. They all intended to keep an eye on them, but before long the group had disappeared. Lily thought they probably just left. Zofia hoped so too, but Carmilla was suspicious. If that group was involved with something deeper, it could be serious. Lily didn't get what she meant, so Carmilla explained. She was talking about the Underground Guild, a group that does things so illegal even demi-humans stay away from them. Of course, she didn't say exactly what they do, so there's no point asking. The group starts to guess that the Golden Phoenix must have come to find Xenos because they have no one else to turn to. That also means they probably don't have any money, and services from the Underground Guild are notoriously expensive. Zofia grows genuinely worried because she remembers hearing about a man in the guild who takes on missions without payment, as long as the conditions are met. He's known by the alias, the Pathfinder. Late at night, Lily wakes up and finds Xenos still awake. She asks if he has insomnia, then brings him a cup of tea to help him relax. After that, she gently strokes his hair to lull him to sleep, but in the end, she's the one who falls asleep first. At that moment, Carmilla comes out and asks if the reunion with his former mates is what's keeping him up. He asks if she's worried about him. If she is, he says he really appreciates it. Of course, Carmilla blushes and tells him to shut up. She just wanted to talk, not get all sentimental. Zenos says he actually forgot all about Aston and the others. However, after meeting them again, he slightly regrets not punching them earlier. But the real reason he can't sleep is because he's thinking about something from much further back. Carmilla curiously asks when he started learning healing magic. He explains he began because he once tried to resurrect a corpse. She's shocked, saying that's forbidden magic. But he was just a kid back then and didn't know any better, and his teacher punished him severely for it. Carmilla recalls that back in her time, there was something similar called artificial life. It was a type of magic used to create golems about 300 years ago, during the Demon Lord's era. It's a lost art now, but she remembers it required a special magic stone as a heart, along with coal and sulfur to function. Those things never got tired and were once terrifying creatures. Then Zenos asks what she used to do back then, but Carmilla just shakes her head and says she doesn't remember clearly. So Zenos figures maybe he should get back to work. But just then, the ground starts to shake. Carmilla senses the tremors are coming from the slums and decides to check it out. And just as they feared, the sight before them is horrifying. Right after they talked about golems, a real one shows up and begins destroying everything. Episode 6. Turns out Aston was really petty, going so far as to hire an assassin to kill Zenos. But because he was broke, he couldn't afford a real assassin and had to get referred to a scout. The scout agreed to do it for free, if the story was interesting enough to be worth the trouble. After hearing Aston explain everything in great detail, the scout burst out laughing. Aston was clearly a selfish jerk, but he let it slide. Hunting Zenos sounded like fun, especially since he had a promising new toy to test out. Back to the present, Zenos and Carmilla had reached the town. As they got closer, they realized the destruction was far worse than expected. They quickly found the 3 remaining girls, who were begging Zenos for help, as many villagers had been injured by the golem. Zenos asked where it came from. Nobody knew. All they saw was that it came from the deepest part of the slums, but that didn't explain why it showed up at all. Hearing that the monster came from the depths of the slums, Zenos began to worry the underground guild might be involved. But now wasn't the time for theories. He told everyone to gather the wounded in one place so he could start healing. He swore that once he was done, whoever caused this would regret it for life. Meanwhile, the scout watched the destruction from afar, satisfied with the golem's power. Sure, it could use some speed upgrades, but it was more than enough to get the job done. He didn't know much about Zenos, but he was excited to see how Zenos would react as his loved ones died one by one before his eyes. Back in the city, the 3 female commanders quickly mobilized the troops to find all the wounded and bring them to Zenos. With everyone gathered, Zenos prepared to heal. He warned Carmilla to step back, or she'd be purified by the spell. Then, he cast mass healing across the area, and all the injured instantly began to recover. Zenos told them to evacuate as soon as possible, then moved on to treat those outside the spell's range. But Zenos was furious. Not only had he been dragged out of the forest in the middle of the night, now he had to heal hundreds of people. With no guarantee of being paid, he was determined to make the one behind the golem pay dearly, even though they still didn't know who it was or what they wanted. As for the scout, he was surprised Zenos managed to heal all the wounded. He was sure some would have died in that chaos. Just by watching, he could tell Zenos was a top-tier healer. But even if he kept the townsfolk alive, unless he destroyed the golem, it would keep wreaking havoc without mercy. Zenos had finished healing and the people were evacuated, but the golem was still destroying everything. Zenos asked if there was any chance it would just get bored and leave. Carmilla shut that down. Golems were built to complete their objectives, and its goal might be to wipe out the entire slums. So it wouldn't stop until nothing was left. Worse, the pure high-grade magic crystal powering the golem's core was supposed to have gone extinct since the Great War. Carmilla had no idea who could have gotten their hands on something that rare. Zenos had really been hoping for some rest, but now he had to deal with this before things spiraled out of control. Everyone offered to fight alongside him, but Zenos asked if they were sure. Because he couldn't promise he'd be able to heal them in time if they got hurt, especially with how dangerous the golem was. Even so, they insisted on standing by him to protect their home. Zenos was grateful for their support, but now they needed a battle plan. So he turned to Carmilla and asked if she knew how to take down a golem. She explained that to stop it, they had to destroy the magic stone at its core. Otherwise, it would keep fighting forever. Zenos looked disappointed. He was hoping to sell the golem's core for money, but he accepted the reality. He told everyone to attack with everything they had, while he provided support from the back. The 3 fighters immediately rushed in. As they got close, Zenos cast speed and then strength enhancement spells, helping them smash one of the golem's legs. It lost balance and fell to the ground. But the victory was short-lived. The golem's magic core gave it regeneration. It swung its arm and sent Linga flying through 3 houses. Normally, that kind of impact would shatter all her bones. But thanks to Xenos she was unharmed. It had been a long time since Xenos joined a real battle, so he was clumsy at first. But now he was regaining his combat rhythm. He had to remember two things. Don't stray too far from his allies, or his support spells wouldn't work. And he couldn't use all three spells, healing, speed, and strength at once. Each required a different activation sequence. He had to rotate them based on the situation. After a while, Xenos realized the golem's regeneration wasn't instant. If they dealt enough damage at once, they could stop it from moving. He told the girls to break both of the golem's legs. Once they managed to do it, the golem collapsed again. Right then, Zofia noticed a child hiding inside a house, directly in the golem's path. Xenos couldn't cast a barrier from this distance, so he rushed to save her. But he was too late. Normally, the girl should have died. And yet, the golem stopped itself to avoid hurting her. That shouldn't have been possible. According to Carmilla, golems didn't have enough awareness to protect others. Something was clearly off, and Xenos figured it out. When he scanned the golem, he found Aston trapped inside. Even the scout was shocked Xenos discovered it so quickly. Turns out the magic crystal he used was incomplete, so it couldn't create a standard golem. Instead, he used a human as the core, and Aston was the perfect test subject. The scout tricked him, implanted the crystal into his body, and turned him into the golem's core, fusing them together. Now, the scout was curious. How would Xenos react to this truth? After saving so many people, would he be able to kill someone who once meant something to him? Xenos took a deep breath and asked the others to leave the battlefield. The girls were confused. They were so close to defeating the golem, why retreat now? But they trusted him, so they pulled back and gave him space. Once they were gone, Xenos faced Aston and said it was time to end everything. Their story began when Aston saved Xenos from the slums, though it had been for selfish reasons. But just now, he had chosen to save a child. Xenos recalled what Gale once said about Aston's obsession with money and power. As a kid, his sister died because he couldn't afford a healer. Since then, he had been obsessed with amassing wealth. Maybe that little girl reminded him of his sister, and instinct made him protect her. That didn't erase all the terrible things he'd done, but it made Xenos wonder, was there still a shred of humanity left in him? Either way, Aston was no longer in his right mind. Xenos had no choice, he drew his scalpel. When Aston tried to crush him, Xenos dodged and turned the scalpel into sword. He slashed off Aston's arm, leapt up, and struck the golem's chest, revealing Aston's true body inside. He didn't enjoy this, but he had to stop Aston from causing more harm. Xenos stabbed Aston in the chest, not to kill him, but to sever the links between him and the magic core. Then he immediately began healing him to keep him alive. The scout was amazed. After healing hundreds of people, Xenos was still precise and focused enough to dismantle the magic and save the victim. Xenos didn't even want to save Aston. He didn't care whether he lived or died. But someone had to pay for the damage done, and Aston couldn't afford it. So he kept him alive to force him to reveal who made the golem. Even if Aston was a jerk, Xenos couldn't deny. If Aston hadn't given him that one last gold coin back then, he would have never saved Lily or opened the clinic. More importantly, he was a healer, and he had sworn to save as many lives as he could, including Aston's. Xenos raised his sword and dealt one final blow to the magic stone, shattering it completely and freeing Aston from the golem's form. Finally, everything calmed down. When Aston woke up, he finally realized just how amazing Xenos truly was. While trapped inside the golem, part of him had remained aware, watching Xenos fight and support the others. It made him realize Xenos had always been doing that, even back when they were still a team. Being betrayed and turned into a mindless puppet made Aston understand how horrible he'd been. No apology could ever make up for it, but he still wanted to say something. Xenos couldn't stand seeing him bow his head in regret, so he told him to raise it, not out of forgiveness, but to make it easier to punch him. Xenos had wanted to punch this guy for a long time, and doing it while he was unconscious wouldn't feel satisfying. Now that Aston was awake, Xenos didn't have to hold back. He boosted his strength tenfold and slowly walked forward. He threw the most satisfying punch of his life, knocking Aston out instantly. A few hours later, Aston came to and saw Krishna standing in front of him. She said she met Xenos on the way here and got the gist of what happened. He was lucky no one died, otherwise he'd be facing murder charges. Even so, she still had to arrest him for multiple crimes: destruction of property, assault, and public indecency. Since Xenos' punch had blown off all his clothes, Krishna also passed along a message from Xenos. Aston's sword had been taken while he was unconscious. It was a high-quality weapon, and Xenos planned to sell it to pay for all the damage Aston caused. Then, Krishna handed Aston a gold coin. It was severance pay from Xenos. From now on, he didn't want to see or hear from Aston ever again. Aston hung his head low, knowing he fully deserved this ending. Now he truly had nothing left. As for Xenos, after everything, he was so exhausted he could barely walk. The girls were worried and offered to carry him home, but he refused, knowing they were tired too. Still, they insisted. Xenos had always been there for them. Now it was their turn to return the favor. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Carmilla had explained everything to Lily. When Xenos came home, Lily welcomed him and asked if he'd like a cup of tea.